Aaron Jones tours a lot in the UK with his band Old Blind Dogs, and he's written all about the American tax system on the MU website. So if anyone wants to if you're thinking about going to America and you want to look that up, it's really useful because he goes through it, and I think he does it for a lot of bands as well, for people that can't really afford big accountants and things. It's really good. At this point, are there any questions from the audience? I can't actually see. Oh, there's one over there.
Hi, do any of you have experience of renting instruments from abroad? Because we went away for a 3-day thing, but we just brought all our own equipment, and it made it a lot cheaper if we'd been able to rent equipment over there. We were in mainland Europe. Has anyone done that?
Yeah, certainly on a recent US tour with 3 by Wolves, we hired pretty much full backline over there. Just basically because the first time we went over, as Tam mentioned, we get hit with quite a big baggage bill. So, the second time we went across, I got the band to all share bags. So 2 guys just put all their clothes in one bag and carry an instrument on each. And we cut our costs down to about £40, I think, in baggage. And backline hire, this is one of the major benefits of having somebody in America or in Holland or in Germany on the ground looking for the best deals for you, I always think that it's good to, if you're a manager or if you're in the band, to go out there first of all and try and make as many contacts, and then and look into backline and look into promoters and agents and all that before you go out and try and do as much of that as you can. I think certainly try to take amps and things like that is definitely not a good idea, I would say.
Going to America is such a tough tour anyway, getting visas and all that kind of sort of stuff. But going to Europe, I'm not where were you going in terms of renting stuff in Europe? If you're taking a lot of stuff, you can drive to quite a lot of places, can't you? Or if you're flying, I don't know.
We were in Slovenia and Croatia.
It's a long way away.
Yeah, we took our amps and everything because it was the first time we went. And
you flew with your amps?
We flew with everything.
Rock and roll.
We ended up at the end of it. About £50 down each, but we were away for a week.
That's okay.
I was
done well.
We were okay with that, but we saw our drummer's snare drum flying off the back of the baggage as we're flying back. It's just it was bouncing along on the tarmac, and that was fun.
Yeah, that happens a lot. It's awful. Right, I just want to know, talking about things going wrong, what's the worst thing that's ever went wrong for you, Jamie, in terms of, oh my God, this is a disaster? What can people look out for?
Certainly, I think we've been pretty lucky in international things. I find the venues in Holland have been absolutely incredible. The venues in America, by and large, have been pretty good. The biggest disasters we probably had have been in the UK, turning up in gigs where I think I'd Over the Wall play a gig in Peterhead, and it was a Saturday night, and I think there's quite a big number of fishermen in Peterhead who maybe work all week, and then they come on Saturday and they want to spend £600 in the pub. So they basically played to an audience of people who basically couldn't stand up and were storming on stage trying to hit keyboards and all that while in the middle of the gig. And the boys were pretty shocked, to say the least. And as soon as they basically just had to grab their instruments and run out the back door to get away. And when they get outside, there was about a 40-man brawl outside and 5 police cars turned up to try and break it all up. So I think probably for touring bands, that's probably the worst experience I've had.
Not any. Lots of horror stories, a whole week of them. But in terms of touring, it's quite difficult putting a tour together. We went to America, and the pretty good agent put in some dates, and then they put in some dates 10 days later and some dates, and we were going, well, how are we going to live for the 5 dates between those dates? They said, oh, don't worry, we'll fill them. And then the kind of tour was getting closer and closer, and we're like, we haven't filled them yet. So then we had to pull these quite big festivals, and then it all got a bit difficult. So that is quite difficult, being tough with an agent who's saying, and most agents, what they really want to do is get the big gigs in for huge fees, and the little fillers they're not really bothered about. So that's quite hard, pushing an agent to make a tour actually work, in terms of driving around. And apart from that, the odd gig being pulled, leading up to a gig, but you can kind of deal with that.
Most horrible story. 2 members of the entourage going missing in a cross-party ferry and having been told they were considered man overboard and having to just make a phone call to somebody's parents saying they were lost at sea. That was pretty stressful for an hour. I blame Stuart Henderson for that if he's just still in the room. Going through a checkpoint in Northern Ireland coming back from Dublin late for a ferry to try to get Belfast, reminding my driver that the checkpoint was there. This was the 10th or 11th of July, when, as you might know, it's a wee bit sensitive over there. And my driver forgetting and just putting the foot down and literally trying to drive through the checkpoint about 80 miles an hour, and the British Army weren't too happy at that. So we think vans surrounded with sochies with our guns pointing at us. That sobers you up a wee bit.
You're lucky they didn't blow out the tyres.
Tell me about it. There's a couple other wee stories I can think of, but that's more for the bar than for the stage.
If I was trying then to book my band 3 gigs in Germany, so I'd emailed them all the information about us and that kind of thing, and then I got the chance to have a phone call, or even just trying to negotiate a fee, by email or whatever. Are you better to... I mean, I just think that most people here assume that you're not going to get paid, but a lot of people don't realise that the fees actually over there are not bad. Yeah. So I think you would be better off saying, we're doing a tour, we'll play for £200, and if they knock you down to 50, then fine. Yeah. But do you know much about that negotiation in terms of trying to get the fees out of people abroad?
Yeah, I think you've always got to go higher than what you're willing to accept, because there will be negotiation there, So, I mean, certainly in Europe, the good thing about Europe is that generally speaking, accommodation and food will be included no matter what, so you don't need to worry about that so much. So, fee-wise, €200 probably quite a good place to start out, and then some people will book you for that. And then other shows, they'll go, well, I've only got €75 or I've only got €100. And hopefully, if you get enough of the 200s, you can make it work. And if you're playing to a decent audience and you've got plenty of merchandise, then that's where you'll make your tour break,
When you are touring, if you get all that organised and you get over there, how can you maximise on who's coming to see you and make sure you don't lose those contacts? If you're just a band kind of going out yourself, with maybe just a mate trying to get email addresses off people or something like that, is there any advice about how to maximise on whilst you're there, so that you don't it's not just you're there and then you're gone?
Well, the minute you've accepted the booking, you speak to the promoter and you ask him for his press list, which will have a list of local contacts, from local bloggers to local newspapers right up to the nationals in that country. If you're trying to do it as a DIY approach, I said my main experience has been with, I've got a press officer locally, I've got a local record company, I've not had too much experience of the DIY approach, but certainly it was the first thing you would do. Whether you're doing a gig in Scotland, England or anywhere, the first thing you do when you accept a book in the town you don't know is try and get the local promoter's press list, his contact list, and add it to your own database.
I know, sort of similar thing. I mean, we've done tours and went to America and hired a big press agent and did all that sort of stuff. But I suppose in a lot of ways it probably would be better for your money to contact bands that are similar to you and try and set up a reciprocal thing. We had things of bringing bands to Scotland and we'd go over to Holland or to Germany. And whenever we played there, it just worked so well. They would tell all their mates, you got to come down and see this band. They'd come here. And so I think that's, contacting sort of like-minded bands is quite a good way of setting up a kind of community that can make gigs happen.
And also in North America, you'll be amazed at the amount of Celtic societies there are in every town. There's expat Scots clubs that will go and see any Scottish band of any genre. And they will turn up, even if it's 10 or 20 people, it's always a start. They'll turn up and see somebody from the old country.
That's true. You might not want them there when they get there, though.
Okay, what I want to do now is just kind of go around you all and say, what is, the most important thing you would tell a band who are touring abroad?
I would merchandise. Make sure you've got as much merchandise as you can afford to get before you go. So whether it be, t-shirts are always good, tote bags are good, and it's also good to be quite creative. Whether you've got, like bottle openers or download codes are always really good to give to promoters and agents, etc. As many things as you possibly can, because no matter where you go, if you play a good show to a decent audience, some people in the audience will buy everything you've got. And without that, I think at a small level, it's pretty much impossible to tour and break even.
I'd say plan it as long in advance as you can do, pick a little time. If you get one gig in that time, try and add gigs to it and really plan it, because it's pretty easy for it to kind of go horribly wrong if you're travelling far away.
Planning is everything, as Toby says. Always have a plan B, and if something goes wrong, it's short notice. Touching on what Jamie said, even take your I certainly can remember one band took the template thing for their T-shirts and printed more T-shirts locally as they went along. If you're away for 2 or 3 weeks, you can do that as well. And as Jamie touched on as well, merch can make or break a tour. And the more innovative, the better. Certainly, one of the bands I manage, the Tartan Specials, a football band, they had a single called We'll Be Coming, so they made up 10,000 condoms with We'll Be Coming on the side. And they managed to sell more condoms than singles.
Well, there you go. Any other questions, or I might just wrap this up, because I think we've probably covered most of the things you need to know. Oh, yeah, there's another question.
Hi, it's Shona Maguire, Plum. I'm just wondering, if you're taking merchandise, is it cheaper to send it out there if you're taking a hell of a lot of stuff, or?
You can even we went to America and got it all printed out there actually, because it's quite expensive to fly them out there, but it is cheaper to ship them, yeah, quite often.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's worth looking into. I mean, certainly for America, I've always pressed in America because that's worked out cheaper. But if you're going to mainland Europe and you're getting the ferry, it's probably cheaper to do it in the UK.
Okay, thanks.
If you're going to book a tour over in Europe, would you recommend like a road manager for it? But would you get one from the UK or someone that's over there?
Sorry, I missed that.
Like a road manager, if you're going to set up a tour in Europe, would you advise to get a road manager for such a tour that can take care of all the logistics and stuff?
Well, certainly the last 3 years, I've used somebody in Europe. I've lucky enough, when I was touring with one of my own bands, I was co-touring with an American band, and I found a very, very competent lady based in Amsterdam, and certainly I've used her 2 or 3 times now. If you can find somebody that's based in Europe, there's a lot of competent tour people that can do the whole job, from TMing right to driving and doing sound as well. There seems to be the main over there that they do all 3, and they're an absolute godsend if you can find one. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, I always think it's good to have somebody who's from the country, because more often than not, they'll end up saving you money, whether it be they know people in a different city where you can maybe stay with them and save in hotels. They know their way around, because I've had experiences of taking a UK tour manager who's never toured in Europe, and he gets lost and ends up costing you a fortune in diesel because he's driving about all over the place. So I think it's good to have somebody with local knowledge always.
If you've got your own tour manager in your band, though, you're probably better staying with them. But if it's great to have somebody there as well. But I remember touring with a Scottish tour manager years ago in Holland, and we were driving around a town for ages till he found he was looking at the wrong map for a different town. But I think you probably know. But I mean, and nowadays I don't think you use maps these days. But
Right, okay, I think that's all the questions, isn't it? I'm so blind though, I don't know. I think it is. Right, one more. Right, we'll take this and then we'll...
Hi, would you suggest only going abroad to places where you have a following, or would you recommend going out to places where nobody's ever heard of you and just trying to get yourself heard? And
Well, I think I mean, for the first time, certainly you're going there to try and make people listen to you and make people know about you. So I guess a lot of that you're relying on the local promoters, etc., to do a bit of work for you, and whether it be they relate you to another Scottish band or another British band perhaps has been out before. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got to go out there. I mean, certainly the first time I took an artist into Europe, we went and just did a whole bunch of radio things. We did 2 shows and we did 4 radio things. And some blog stuff, and then that therefore made it possible for me to go back with a full band and make the tour work financially, because we'd got a bit of a buzz going. So I always think it's good to go over, if you've got a band, if it's possible, to go with just the singer and keep your costs down and do some promo. I always think that's quite a good way to do the first time.
And when you come back, don't change your money in Marks and Spencer's. Check converters are quite cheap, I think. It's worth checking for the cheapest place.
How the hell do you come back from a foreign tour with money?
Old.
Musician coming back with money sensation.
Right, will you two, in fact you 3, be around later on during the day? Are you happy for people to just come up and ask you other questions? Sure. Yeah. Okay, well thanks very much, panel. Cheers.
Cheers.